Good morning. How is everyone? Hope you are having a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. This is one of those nice fall days in Northern California, in my opinion. It's kind of foggy outside and cool, so I like that. So I see that someone, a quilting bug. Diana's first time here. Welcome. I'm glad you've stopped in. Um, all right. And you have already have a question on there. We're going to be talking about Terial Magic today. And it's a product that I have seen a number of times. I actually bought some and just had not used it. So I decided that I would try to work with it a little bit and play around, and got kind of excited about it. So I thought I would share it here this afternoon, and or this morning actually here for me. So Terial Magic comes in a bottle like this. And the store has it on thequiltshow.com. And it's basically a fabric stiffener, is what it says right here on the bottle. And what that also does is it keeps fabric from fraying, and it's a stabilizer. And I thought, well, how does that work, and how is it any different? And could it be better than an actual, cloth or paper stabilizers that we use for different things? So I started testing it for different ways that I might use a stabilizer. And if you have used it, and there's another way that I'm not sharing this morning, please be sure to put it in the chat room, because we'd all like to hear it. I've just been playing this week with different ways that I might find to use this Terial Magic. So let me just talk about it a little bit, because it does make your fabric come out feeling like paper. And it has the same consistency. When I take a piece of my medium weight inkjet printer paper and the Terial Magic fabric that I have stabilized with it, it feels very similar to that whole paper look. So anyway, Terial Magic. And it does run through the printer really, really well. And it also, there's a couple of things that you need to do to make it most successful for you. First of all, you take your fabric. I personally like to cut my fabric a little bit bigger than I need. So whatever the project is doing, so that once it is put onto the fabric and ironed, it can be cut to size, because it does stretch the material, and the material is wet, and you press it. So I do make sure that I have enough fabric so that I can trim it down to size. And I see some of the people saying on the side that they love it. It's great stuff. And we'll talk about that and some of the other questions that I see popping up here in just a minute. So to do this, you get your fabric, you get a bowl, a pan, something like that, where as you spray, the excess goes into the bowl, goes into the pan, whatever, and just saturate your fabric with the Terial Magic. Make sure that there are no dry spots, and when you've done saturating it, squeeze the excess out of it and let it sit and dry partially for about 20 minutes has been a good amount of time for me for the little projects that I've been doing. Bigger pieces of fabric, I don't know, may take longer. I worked with 12 inches or less of fabric for what I was doing for today. And then you're going to simply iron it dry. When you iron it, I put on my ironing mat some of my parchment paper, just to keep my mat or my ironing board or whatever I'm working on a little bit cleaner. So the other key to this is that you press it on both sides. That way it's going to get into all the fibers, and then it comes out a little bit stiff. Let me show you. This is a piece that I have already done, and as you can see, it does have the feel and consistency of paper. When you have regular fabric and you're just holding it up, it flops like this. This doesn't flop. It's like a piece of paper, and it's pretty wonderful. The first thing that I would say is that this is great for, or at least I felt that it could be. I do not have a die cut machine, so I traced and cut these out by hand. But if you have a die cut machine, this would make that so quick and very easy, and it cuts beautifully. And the other thing that this does is it keeps your fabric from fraying, which is really nice, because once you have trimmed it down, these frays were there before that you see up here, and I left them on there because this had happened prior to me putting the Terial Magic on it. But once I cut it on this side over here, you can see that it's not fraying. And when I am working, especially with raw edge applique, I don't want that fray when I'm sewing it down and prepping it and all of that. This is another piece that I used, and someone was asking, what about for embroidery work? And so I did try that out. I don't do the machine embroidery, so I can't speak to that specifically, but this is, those decorative stitches, and I sewed across this, and it worked really well. And if you just give me a second here, we'll switch cameras, and I have my machine set up. Let me get this. All right. So I've got a decorative stitch on there, and I'll show you that this is all that's on here is the Terial Magic, and it moves through. There is no puckering. I like that. Couple reasons I think that I would really enjoy that is because sometimes when I'm making something or working on something, I don't necessarily want that heaviness or the paper behind, left in there. If I was doing, something on clothing, I think this would be absolutely wonderful to put on a jacket that I was making or using it for that, because it does wash out. And once you wash it out, it's back to normal fabric again. And I'm going to show you here in a minute, when it's washed out, what it looks like and how different it is. And you saw how easy that sewed straight through there with really not much issue at all. And there really is no puckering whatsoever in that piece. This is the world's smallest try on something. I just freehanded a little pumpkin on there, and then I did both a straight stitch for 1/8 of an inch, and I also did a little bit of a decorative stitch with nothing but the Terial Magic fabric, and then I washed it, so it's back to being basically regular fabric. And there is no fray here. There's no fray here. I've been playing with it. I washed it. So it says in the instructions that 99% of it washes out. So there may be a little bit left in there, but this is just regular fabric. And for as tiny as a project that was, there was no pull on it. There is no buckling or anything. So for me, that's absolutely kind of wonderful, especially if I am, sewing something down or I want that stabilization to it, but I don't necessarily want the stabilizer that stays on the back, or that extra heaviness. The other thing that I was thinking about as I was sewing this is t-shirt quilts get so heavy, and I'm thinking, when I do that fabric, if I put this Terial Magic on the fabric, I wouldn't have to put that interfacing stuff in the back of it to work with it. And then when it was done and I washed that quilt, I have it far more softer than it generally comes out when I leave the stabilizer in. So this is really kind of cool. And I saw Patricia put up buttonholes. So she must use it for buttonholes, and it must work really well for that. So there's another thought for that. So with that being said, I cut a little poinsettia out, and, putting it together, a little bit interesting what this also does, because it's good for things like the embroidery applique. I tried it, with the raw edge applique. I don't know that I would necessarily use it for the turned applique, but it did work for that. And so, but I wanted this, you can kind of bend it and get these leaves to kind of work their way. And what I did is I took my turning tool that I have, and this is pincushion that I have those walnut shells in, and I stuck this in the center, and I just pressed it in so that it gave each of these pieces here a little bit of dimension in that center piece, so I can sew these three down together and maybe put a French knot or something in the center of that. What I plan to do with this is to put a stretchy, soft elastic around it and make a headband for this little cutie. This is my son and granddaughter. And the other thing that I really, really like about this Terial Magic is that I ran these through the printer. This is off my phone. I simply pulled the picture up from my phone. I hit print and put it's just a white muslin fabric, and I put it in, and I put print, and this little cutie appeared, and so she'll have a little poinsettia hair bow to put on that cute little head of hers. And so I wanted to try both. This color is very much right on as far as her little outfit, the color of that, and the picture that had been taken of her. And I took it to black and white to see what it looked like with that. And I think that I was most excited about how easily it goes through the printer and how beautiful the photographs come out. And now I can put this into a tote bag. I can, do other things with that. Or whatever you would do with pictures, or whatever you want to print off for projects that you're doing for crafts. This stamps really well also. And then I was also thinking from last week, those cards that we made using Misty Fuse. And the Misty Fuse, as you know, worked really well. But if you didn't want that little bit of Misty Fuse on your card or whatever, you can't really tell it's there too much. But I used it, and I used a combination. I used the Terial Magic this is a piece of fabric in the back, paper. This is another cutout that you could use with your die cut machine and make some really nice Christmas cards or things like that for, for Christmas, to give. And basically you're giving a little piece of yourself and a little piece of artwork along with that. So that is another thought on that. The other thing is I like to combine some of my work. And but before I do that, I just looked up here, and Irene, she's asking, wouldn't the photo wash away? I iron set it, I washed it, and it is still there. It's perfectly fine. I did a couple other pieces, and the photo did not wash away. So this is another itty bitty teeny tiny. I wanted to see if paint would work. I was doing some stuff with some watercolor. I had it out, so I picked up a piece of my Terial Magic, and this is with watercolors. And I drew this little branch and with berries on it and a little flower thingy at the bottom. I let it dry. I heat set it, and then I washed it. It's back to that floppy. The color stayed put. It looks great, and I will have to say that I liked the fact that it had the paper feel, because I felt like I was still watercoloring on, watercolor paper. And, that was exciting to me, because acrylics, the watercolor, other things that you might do for your crafts or to make things, I think that would be just wonderful. And my head was spinning with all the possibilities for doing that. The other thing that is pretty cool too is that I just took a series of pens and to write on this for quilt labels, and using the watercolor or acrylics or something else to make that. But it just makes writing on this wonderful. It's like writing on paper. So, but I'm just using, ink pens, different brush strokes, and all of them just work so well. Fabrico pencils, that's made for fabric. So you can see just how easily and nice that writes, as though I was writing on paper, because that's exactly what this feels like. And heat set it, and you've got where you can make your labels, and it's in your own handwriting, which I think is really nice. But you could certainly, now that you know that you can run it through your printer, you could make your quilt labels on your printer, put in clip art, other things from that, and just print it directly off, cut it out, sew it in, and then when it's washed, it's very soft along with the rest of your quilt. So those are, some of the really fun things that I saw using this product. So this is only a few things that you could possibly use it with. It's basically, you can leave it in or you can wash it out. Leaving it in, I went searching to see if, it attracts bugs or anything like that, and several people, and the product itself said no. I haven't had anything around long enough to find out if that's true. And and obviously you can wash it out. If you make like the card, or you do an art piece, or you do a craft piece where you want permanence and water resistance, you can use the clear acrylic matte spray finish on a piece of completed art, and or a craft that you're doing. If a wreath or something that you're going to make for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, you could certainly use it on that as well. I want to go back and look at some of your comments and questions. I know there was a few things that came up. Diana asked about keep it Terial Magic from clogging up. I used it each day during the week. I did not have any clogging problem with that. I think if I did, I would probably run hot water through it, or I would use, a pin or something to unclog it. But I can't really answer to that question because I did not have that issue. And let's see. Let's see if there's anything else here. Uh, does Terial Magic replace stabilizer when embroidering? With those decorative stitches, from that perspective, I would say yes, but the embroidery machine is a whole different story. I'm guessing that it would work the same way, and yes, you could do that because there was no, even after I washed it, there was no puckering, none of that. Um, uh, Somebody else said that they've used it with their machines, the silhouettes, the Cricut or Cricut. So they've already used that. They know it works really well. And somebody else used it for a t-shirt quilt and said it worked wonderfully. So that's good to have that reinforced there. And it does wash out. Somebody asked if it stays stiff. No, it washes out. Your fabric is right back to being what it was before you put it in. And Paula says that they used it when they did all the thread painted portraits in the Magna Carta quilts, and it was awesome. And other people are saying, that they've used it, they love it, and somebody else says they use it all the time when they're working with bias, and it works great on applique circles. And somebody asked, did the watercolor bleed at all? No, it did not. Not one bit. I let the watercolor dry. I heat set it, and then I washed it out, and there was nothing. Now, here's an interesting thought. Nikki shares, in a pinch, could scan and print a piece of fabric onto white fabric like photo if you're out of the fabric needed, like for a small piece to complete the project. That never crossed my mind. That's an interesting idea, and as soon as I am done this morning, I'm going to try that, see how that works. And Landa asked if I had to change the paper type to cardstock in the printer. No, it's really not that heavy like cardstock. And it went through my printer beautifully. I didn't change a thing on it because it felt exactly the same as the paper that I was using in the printer. And it works with both inkjet and laser printers. And the key to all of this is for, the printing with the printer, with the watercolor, with the ink pens, all of that. And some pens, Sharpies tend to bleed a little bit. I saw less bleeding with the Terial Magic in there, and once I washed it, there was no more bleeding with that. So that was another plus for me. If you're going to put handwrite on like a quilt label or something else, and you wanted to use, a Sharpie or something, whereas normally the Sharpie kind of bleeds out in normal fabric. And when I say normal fabric, I mean cotton fabric that does not have Terial Magic in it. You have to heat set it. So remember that. Heat setting for any type of paint, and when you're using acrylic, I would probably use paint it on with the fabric medium that you can purchase at Michael's, Joann's, any art supply store with that. So and does it make a difference which side you put through the printer once sprayed? No, If you're going to print on plain fabric, no, it doesn't. If you're printing something onto a fabric that's already printed on one side, then yes, it probably would, but otherwise, no. And so I think it's wonderful. Nikki suggests that you might want to test it on a scrap first before to make sure that it doesn't burn or change the color of your fabric or whatever. But everything that I've read about it, it's good for both laser and for inkjet. So anyway, that is what I discovered about Terial Magic. I think it is a great product to have in for all kinds of reasons, and I'm excited that I finally decided to try it and use it and see what I could do with it, and especially for craft projects and t-shirt quilting. I'm looking forward to trying it there because the heaviness of the t-shirt quilts have always kind of bugged me a little bit because when they're big, they get really heavy. And so I think this will take some of that away. So I'm excited about it for a lot of reasons. Now, I want to also tell you before you go away that on thequiltshow.com, in their shop, they're having a cyber sale. It started, and all their fat quarter bundles and their quilt kits are 20% off through Sunday night. So tomorrow night, that sale ends. And if you put in the words, the code is Cyber21. And so code Cyber21. And it's a great time. There's some great kits. In fact, one of the kits, Spreading Joy, I will be for the next 3 weeks walking through how to make the 3 main blocks that are in that particular kit. So again, if you might want to make one of those or purchase one of those kits or any of the Christmas fat quarter bundles, and there's some really really pretty ones on there, do that before Sunday night. And for Spreading Joy quilt kit, that I will be sharing how to make those 3 main blocks that are in there. Actually, one of them is the word joy that is in that quilt when you go to the site and look that up. So you can get 20% off of that kit by tomorrow night, and work along with me as we work through those 3 blocks. And I'm very excited about that because it's a very pretty quilt. It's contemporary. I like it, and the other kits are just as beautiful and wonderful as well. So cyber sale, fat quarter bundles and quilt kits on the Quilt Show. So for the next 3 sessions that we're together next week and the first 2 Saturdays of December, I'll be sharing those blocks and how to put those together. So try out the Terial Magic. Go to the shop, purchase it. It's in the shop right now, and have fun playing with it and using it as another tool in your toolbox. And I thank you for being here. And as far as I just saw several things coming up, what type of printer. I have an HP, but Canon, Epson, anyone that you have is going to work. There is nothing that I read where there's no type of printer that doesn't. You probably can't go to like Staples or one of those type of stores. They usually do not put fabrics or things through their machines like that, but your home printer would certainly print all of this. And whatever printer that you have, I'm sure would work just as well. I was very pleased and rather amazed at how easily it went through the printer, and then the quality of the picture that came out from a picture that I took from someone else's picture off of my iPhone. So anyway, hope you enjoy playing around with this, and I hope to see you back next week for spreading joy, and we'll start with putting those together. And don't forget about the cyber sale that is going on until tomorrow night on thequiltshow.com. So we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and blessings to you all.